All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Melody Bowdon, Director of Graduate Studies for the Department of Writing and Rhetoric. And it's exciting for me to welcome all of you here and to host this event. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of students who are interested in a variety of career paths in the program and really interested in the kinds of things that some of our distinguished alumni who are here have pursued. So we have three speakers tonight. Dr. Laura Gonzalez, who received her MA with us in 2012, is Associate Professor of English at the University of Florida and a user experience researcher with a variety of organizations that you can talk to us about if you'd like to, Laura. I'll introduce everybody and then we'll start with Laura and then go just alphabetical order. And Emily, I went on your second last name, so there you go. So Laura will begin, and then Chris Hixon, who received his MA here in 2021, is the Director of Development for the College of Arts and Sciences and an adjunct lecturer in the first year writing program at the University of Miami. So thank you so much for being here, Chris. And Emily Brennan Moran, MA in 2015, is a technical writer and editor with Waste Pro USA. And all of these folks are more things than what I just said, and I may have said wrong things, so correct me, expand, whatever. But I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez.
Hey everyone. I'm not presenting or anything, right? I'm just kind of
You're
sharing
just
my
talking.
experience.
You're just
Okay.
talking.
Okay. All right. Well, so yeah,
Where's your PowerPoint? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No PowerPoint.
um, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm Laura Gonzalez. Like Dr. Bowden said, I'm at the University of Florida, but I also do user experience research for organizations like Facebook, Home Depot, and like different nonprofits around. So I'm happy to kind of talk about that. I credit everything I know about research to the Department of Writing and Rhetoric. So I started my master's program there when like very early on when the department was first getting established and kind of splitting off from English. And I picked rhetoric because I know I wanted to get a master's program, but I didn't really know what rhetoric was about. I just knew that I wanted to do something different than literature, which I had done at UCF as my undergrad. And so yeah, I think I came into the department at a really interesting time. There was a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces. There was a little bit of shock because it was like, what is this new department? How is it different from English? But what that led to for me was so much opportunity to work really closely with faculty who are still like my biggest mentors, not just in academia, but in life, generally speaking, and a lot of flexibility to kind of study what I wanted to. So one big thing that happened for me was that in my literature undergrad at UCF, I had read a lot of quote unquote traditional texts that didn't really tie to my identity or my experience, many of them for many reasons. But at DWR is where I started to become interested in the connections between identity and language and culture and writing. And so that's where I started to become interested in multilingualism, generally speaking. And I was encouraged in the department to, yeah, to explore that and to dig into it further and to incorporate it as part of my research, to not keep my identity separate from what my research, but really think of my identity as like my expertise and leverage it to understand big world problems in a different way. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up doing my master's in the department, focused on writing, but also really focused on multilingual learners. I didn't even know that's what they were called at the time. I just thought they were students because at UCF, most of our students are multilingual learners. We don't necessarily always talk about them that way, or at least we didn't when I was, I don't know, back in the day. But they were. And the student population there and the fact that I got to do research there really shaped how I approach everything in the world. I decided to then, I became a lecturer at UCF and got to focus on teaching a lot, which I know is a big emphasis in the department. And that really, 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 really prepared me so well for a PhD program because when I went to get my PhD at Michigan State, after being a lecturer, after learning to teach at UCF and DWR, I was so well prepared to be a teacher. Um, in a way that a lot of my peers hadn't had that opportunity. There just wasn't that focus in their program. So in a PhD program, one of the things you often have to do is teach. And that consumes a lot of your time to the point that you maybe have to sacrifice some of your research time and sacrifice some of the other work that you're doing. For me, because I had such good preparation at UCF, I didn't feel that way. I felt like teaching, I got this. I feel comfortable in the classroom. I know who I am as a teacher. I know how to relate to my students. I know how to like build activities that are engaging to them. I've had freedom to design my own classes already. Like I know what that feels like. And so I was able to really leverage other opportunities and like not let my research get put to the side in a PhD program because I was so well prepared as a teacher. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that. I don't know if I should keep going or if I should just let other people talk and then
Well, if you want to, we can pivot to Chris and then just have a conversation. Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right, we'll do that. Thank you so much, Laura.
Hey there. It's so good to be back at UCF, albeit virtually. And this program I love so much. So I started at UCF for my undergraduate degree, and I did political science with a double major in English literature. My goal was to be a political speechwriter, and I really wanted to get into that realm. At the time when I joined UCF, the writing studies department had just begun the same semester. So I didn't really know about the degree program. It wasn't an option at the time to get a BA in writing and rhetoric. So I went on with English literature, loved it, but I got to the end of my major and was looking for more things before I graduated. And I went to the advising office, saw Adele and was like, I want to be a writing and rhetoric minor. How do we do this? And she like redid my schedule. And in 1 year, I think I was able to complete the minor for writing and rhetoric along with political science. So it was super, super exciting. I love the courses. And like I said, I wanted to go into politics so badly, but I took one class by Dr. Wardle that was called Writing for Communities and Nonprofits, where we took a nonprofit that we cared about and had to think about how writing could change that nonprofit and better it. So I chose children's hospitals because I very much cared about that based on my life experience and fell in love. I was like, writing does have the power to change the world. And I really, really care about this. So that was the resume to get me my first job actually in fundraising, which it was so cool to say like, this is what I did in the classroom and here's how it applies to my real world life. So I've been in fundraising since 2015. I switched to higher ed fundraising in 2018, where I worked at UCF, and I wanted to go back into the classroom. I looked at a lot of different degree programs, talked to a lot of advisors. And when it came to the Department of Writing and Rhetoric, I was like, this is where I want to be. I learned about people's different thesis and research interest. And I believe Natasha, who was leading the department at the time, at least the graduate programs, she told me about someone's paper on the rhetoric of Beyonce's Super Bowl halftime show. And I was like, oh, I'm so in. I can study whatever I want. This is incredible. So all that to say, I started in 2019 with the program, and there was this little thing that happened in 2020. You guys may know about it. It was called the pandemic. And so half of my instruction was in person. The second half was virtual, and I worked full time and I had to do grad school at night. And so I closed my laptop and would open it 30 minutes later and just start with class. But it really helped me understand the world. There was so much going on at the time, as we all know and have experienced. And the classroom, everything that we studied, it just helped me better understand what's going on. And so very, very, very much loved it and have so much gratitude for understanding the pandemic and the world and social justice because of the classes that I took. I also looked into identity studies and representation and who is represented and who's at the table, who's not at the table. Like it allowed me to think and ask these questions. So when it came to my research interest, I really wanted to study panic. I was wondering, why do people freak out? What words do we use to make people have this like mass hysteria? And I decided that in 2019, not really comprehending that in 2020 there would be panic and mass hysteria to levels we have not seen in many, many years. So I studied, how education is being attacked and people looking at, different theories that we can and cannot talk about at times within a classroom setting. And why are people so upset about that? And so I studied headlines and I took classes in composition and rhetoric. And it was just so good to bring those two together to help me understand what I wanted to research. I say that I came for the rhetoric because I wanted to study like, the political angles of, how people talk to each other, but stayed for the composition because I didn't realize how much I would actually love teaching writing and learning how to teach writing. So I say all that because I then graduated, stayed in fundraising, and ended up at the University of Miami. I started about 2 years ago, and I got my first job as a lecturer, as an adjunct lecturer. So while I do fundraising full time, I always make sure to have a class on hand so I can help teach students. And it's been so incredible, but I couldn't have done it without the department. Like Dr. Robertson, like I call her all the time when I was doing my syllabus. So to have this lifelong relationship with the professors is something I never would have thought I would get from an education degree. So I just can't say thank you enough to the department for what it's done for me. It's helped me understand the world, helped me be a better human, and also helped me be a better teacher to help and inspire other students in the future.
Thank you. Emily, Dr. Moran.
Thank you. So thank you all for inviting me. It's great to be here, and so to be back in Orlando as well. So I have a little bit of a different path. I'm from Orlando, went to undergrad outside of Orlando in Georgia, came back for my master's, and then my husband and I recently moved back about a year and a half ago now to live in Central Florida again. So we're very excited to be here and be back kind of home at UCF. So he's actually a faculty member at UCF in the Department of Computer Science. So I was at UCF from 2013 until 2015. So kind of in an opposite way to the story that Chris shared, I came for the Writing Center and then stayed for Rhetoric. So I had a religion degree for my undergraduate, but had worked in writing centers. And so when I moved back home to Central Florida, I actually was looking to work professionally in a writing center, and talked to Mark Hall at the time. And he said, well, we don't have professional tutors, but we have a master's program. And so the rest there was history. And after starting at UCF, I really fell in love with rhetoric and with that kind of thinking and the kind of cultural studies aspects to rhetoric. So I worked with Angie Ronzavell and also with Blake Scott on my thesis, and was in memory studies was the area I was working in, thinking about the kind of politics of Holocaust memory in Israel and the United States. And I ended up getting a PhD in communication at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill because they had a particularly strong memory studies rhetoric kind of conglomeration in that communication department at the time. So got my PhD, finished in 2020, ended up as a faculty member at George Mason University in Virginia, which is a research institution in the Department of Communication. So I was an assistant professor there for 3 years, was teaching undergraduate classes in the department, taught graduate classes in the department, taught PhD classes for the cultural studies PhD program while I was there, was publishing, doing all of the things that an assistant professor does on their kind of path to get tenure. And then when my husband and I decided there was a job open at UCF for him in computer science, and that was a moment for me to kind of make a decision. So this is a moment where I pivoted, and that's something. So my kind of big lesson in terms of what the future looks like after your master's degree is that it's okay to change your mind. So I had always wanted to be a professor. That was like from high school. I thought that would be the coolest thing. And I was a professor, and I realized that for a lot of reasons that maybe wasn't the thing that I was going to be doing forever. That there were parts of the job that I really loved, and there were parts of it that weren't the best fit for me. And so I elected, when my husband came down and started his job at UCF, instead of looking for a partner hire and kind of going the route of being a faculty member elsewhere, decided to leave academia and go into private industry. So I was looking in 2 areas, and this is, as somebody with a degree in writing and rhetoric, you have a lot of skill sets. So the teaching that you've done is a particularly marketable skill set in a number of arenas. So I initially was thinking maybe I'll look in instructional design because I had taught, and because I was a faculty member in 2020, I had taught online, learned a lot of those systems that are used in industry as well in terms of instructional design. But a lot of people encouraged me, including some people I had gotten my PhD with who had also transitioned into private industry, to look at proposal writing. And the Department of Writing and Rhetoric and the work that I did in this department is really where my strong writing background, but also my strong writing coaching background came from. So I got a job with Waste Pro, which is a Central Florida Longwood-based trash company. So we probably pick up your garbage if you live in Central Florida. But we are across 11 states in the Southeast, and most of our work comes from franchise municipal contracts, which means a city or a county puts out a request for proposals, and we and other haulers, people like Waste Management, WM, who I'm sure you've heard of, send in our proposal and we bid on the work. So these documents are anywhere often from 100 pages to sometimes up to 400 pages long that we're putting in to bid on this work. And the company that I'm working for, in the 11 states where we exist, they had different kind of marketing people across those states writing the proposals in all of the markets, but no centralized person in their corporate office who was standardizing those materials. So they hired me to develop a program. So my title is technical writer and editor, but really I'm a project manager, a proposal coordinator, a writer. I've built the standardized library of those materials, but it is the fact that I have those advanced degrees from UCF and then also the PhD work that I did that have let me be able to do the research and the kind of strategic thinking that comes in with not just talking to a subject matter expert and then writing what they say, but also making some of those high level decisions about what does it look like to create this library that then can be operationalized across markets everywhere from Miami to Mississippi. And so if you can imagine what it looks like to do work, boots on the ground, kind of sanitation work looks a little bit different in rural counties versus large cities. So those are the kinds of decisions that I'm making in this role out of the work that I did as a writing studies student at UCF is what does it look like to write across those different stakeholders and across those different markets?
Thank you. You all beautifully covered so much ground, very concisely there. I want to ask a question of all of you, and we'll open it up for other people too. But you were very gracious about describing all the things that you got from this program, which is wonderful. Can you tell us what advice you might have if somebody wants to follow in your, in addition to completing their degree here, if they want to do something along the lines of what you've done, besides getting the MA in writing and rhetoric, what else can they do to make that happen? And I don't care who goes first.
I would say make connections, and this goes for like undergrad, master's, whatever. It's not about just checking the box of you took the class and you got your grade, but it's about like how did you leverage the experience or the opportunity to connect with people. So you have amazing researchers and faculty who are there. And as a faculty member, I can say this now, like students sometimes feel bad asking me for X, Y, and Z in terms of mentorship. It's part of our job to do that. Like it is literally written into our contract that we are responsible for mentoring. And so don't feel bad about it and ask your professors to shadow them on a research project. So much of what I learned I got from just offering to help my professors with XYZ research project and them saying, okay, and kind of bringing me along for the journey. And next thing you know, you're at a conference and you're meeting their colleagues and you're expanding your network so that when you are out there looking for a job or looking for whatever, you have so many different people who are not just at UCF, but are in the field more broadly, who can vouch for you and like who know you and who know that you're talented. So I would say, I think also having been at UCF for like my undergrad and grad school career, I know what it's like to be a UCF student. You're working, you have family responsibilities, you have a lot of stuff going on, and it's already difficult enough to go to class and get whatever done. So I'm not saying do everything, but do leverage the experience and the opportunity that you have, like in the mentors who are in that department, because it is very rare to have a program in writing and rhetoric, actually. You might have writing and rhetoric certificates or like programs within a bigger English department or communication studies department, but to have a standalone writing program where all your faculty know what the field of rhetoric is, where they're immersed in the field, that's very rare. It's a huge opportunity. And so I would say, ask your professors how you can help them with a project. Bring the idea to the table and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this project. It doesn't have to be tied to a class. Get people to jump on board and collaborate with you, because that collaboration and the building of that network is what's going to get you to the next step.
Thank
I would
you.
add, oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Melanie. I would add, and this is something that those of you who are in the workforce, and maybe because I don't know all of your backgrounds, maybe getting a master's in addition to working a full-time job, probably already know this and it might be obvious to you. But as somebody who went from my undergrad to my master's to my PhD to an academic job, and then was in my 30s going out into the corporate world for the first time, something that I learned in terms of finding those opportunities was, I think people with a research background in particular may be very careful about saying, I can do this, and this is what I have done, and being very specific, because we're taught that that specificity is very important, being very specific about what you can do. And it wasn't until I was able to kind of step outside of myself and outside of the very specific things I had done as a faculty member and generalize them and say, okay, so what are the skills that I have, not what are the tasks that I have done. And as soon as I started writing my materials based on the skills that I had, I immediately started getting interviews in ways that I didn't get interviews when I was trying to explain to them what it looked like to teach online during a pandemic, because the corporate world didn't care. They very much care about my skills, and my skills are very useful to them, but I had to learn how to translate those. And something about that didn't click for me until it had to. So that's a piece of advice that I have.
And I love that advice so much, because I was going to say something very similar, like apply the knowledge to whatever field you want to go into. I think there's so many transferable skills, to Emily's point, within the program. And so if you're able to apply what you've learned in the classroom to say, this is going to help me in my career because X, Y, and Z, then people see those translatable skills there, and they see how equipped you are because of your well-rounded approach. And I think that UCF does a really good job at a well-rounded approach to developing not just scholars, but global citizens, people who are going to excel in the workforce. And so, for example, for me at least, I'm in fundraising. I appeal to people all the time. I'm talking to people about how to make, gifts to better universities, institutions, causes they care about, whatever. And by talking about my degree program and how we demonstrate impact through appeals, that's audience studies. That's looking at, message and audience. Like, it's all part of the basics of what make rhetoric. And when I learned how to do that, people understood that my degree wasn't just something on paper, it was something that I do in the person who I am. And alongside that, in composition studies, when you're looking at how to write effectively, how to make people believe you, how to make people, trust you, that we learned the theory of it, but the practice is what's going to get you that next job. So I think if you can find the verbal application to all the things that you're doing, like in a class, even taking a little bit of time afterward to say, how can this help me in my career? Then I think that, you're in really good shape. Also, applying the knowledge to something that's meaningful, that also pays the bills and helps make a living are the two. A lot of people, have these passions. They want to work with what they're passionate about, which is great. Passions are awesome. I have a passion for higher education, but I also need a job that, pays the bills so I can pay rent and do all those things. And so find that alignment between something that you really care about and something that also you can make a living with and be really proud of. I think that's where I kind of always fluctuated, but the program really helped me hone in on like, okay, these are the skills that I've had, to Emily's point, but here's what I can do with it. And here are all the options available to me.
That is so useful. I'm excited. We need to incorporate this conversation into our capstone course that we have now as an alternative to theses. This is super relevant. Rachel was in that class in the fall, and I suspect she would echo that. All right. Okay, so who else has questions? Rachel, Rachel's mic isn't working. I don't know if, I know Rachel is someone who is graduating right away, or Angeli or Tasha, and I know Zarya is there with Tasha. Anybody have questions? And I'm not doing my good teacher pause. All of that can happen. But also, if Chris and Emily and Laura have questions or more conversation that they want to jump into, that's good too. And now I will do my teacher pause.
Hi, everyone. I'm Angeli Suarez. I'm a first-year PhD student at Texan Technology at UCF. I have a very practical question. I teach K-12. Technically, I'm presenting for a living to a bunch of high schoolers. But when it comes to presenting in class, I have the tendency to blank out, or my mind sees, I plan a presentation, I'm at home, I got it, and then I present in class, and everything just gets bundled up in my head. How do you overcome like these types of nuances in higher education, if any?
Oh, I can
I
hop
can
in.
go
Oh, go
ahead
ahead,
first,
Chris.
Laura.
No, go ahead, Chris. Go. Well, I was going to tell you the story of my first conference presentation was the Writing Program Administrators Conference in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I forgot what year it was. It was like my second year of my master's program. I was in Orlando, and the department, like, I felt so grateful because the department like helped pay for my registration or whatever. Anyway, and I prepped these beautiful slides, or I thought they were beautiful. They were, and like this whole thing. And then it comes time for me to do my presentation, and my hands were shaking so bad that somebody from the audience had to get up to plug my computer to the projector because I kept like dropping the dongle thing. That's how nervous I was. So it didn't matter like that I had, practiced and done all this stuff. That's how nervous I was. So one thing I will say is like the only thing that will make it better is time, because you will get more confident as you move forward. And then figuring out like what is the thing that you need. For me, what I need is to script out at least the first 5 minutes and practice that. And after those 5 minutes, I'm comfortable and I can look at the audience and I can let go of the paper. But for those 5 minutes, I learned this about myself. Like, I need to have the script and I need to have it written down, and I need it to be like exactly what I'm going to say so that I get in that mode. And once I'm there, get into my teacher mode and I'm like, okay, I can talk you through these examples, no problem. But for those first 5 minutes, that's what I need. Like, it's still to this day, every conference presentation, I do that. I'm not saying everybody needs that. I'm just saying you should figure out what it is that you need to be comfortable in that space. And also, give yourself grace and give yourself time, because I had been teaching too, but it's different when you're presenting to colleagues than when you're presenting to students. Like the nerves just come, and it's okay.
I think that's really great advice, and I'm a little similar. I have something more tactical that I do is because I get the same way when I was first teaching. It was my first time teaching last year, and I was like, I'm gonna get lost in my thoughts, or they're not gonna believe me, or I'm not gonna relate to them in any way. And I got really in my head about it. But I would have like my presentations on Canva kind of like ready to go, like PowerPoint style, but I didn't want it to be too word heavy. And I wanted to be able to just talk to people. So what I did was write down like keywords to keep me on track, which really helped me. So let's say I'm talking about, space, and I'm talking about the different comets or astronomy figures or whatever. I would write down like Pluto. And I was like, okay, make sure that you explain the Pluto story, because it's really important for them to know the smallest planet. Okay. And then the next one, talk about, stars aligning together. And I would just use these one keywords to keep myself on track, because that reminded me of that story. So if I said one word, at least I would know, like, okay, check that box. I got through that. So instead of reading off a script, I kind of like put these little codes, if that makes sense, that's what helps keep me on track. Because if I know the keyword of that story, I'm more confident to say that story. That is super niche and super technical, but that helped me so much. And it got to the point where I didn't need the notes anymore. I still use it sometimes with big presentations, but for the most part, I'm pretty confident in my jive and my rhythm, just because I started with that one practice.
When I used to teach, I would outline and then I would read it right before the class, and I would carry the outline into the class, but usually I didn't need to look back at it because I had done the art of writing it, which was its own kind of mnemonic. And then I had read it right beforehand. And I knew if I got lost, it was there. But for the most part, the slides would be enough and I wouldn't need to look down. But I would highlight things that I was afraid I might forget, just for that kind of tactical memory.
Right, those are great answers. Rachel has put into the chat, I would like to go into the industry as a tech writer. I'm curious if any of you would have any advice about making yourself more competitive. Is there any continuing education that you would recommend? And also, what are your favorite things about your jobs?
I have a question back, Rachel. So when you say as a tech writer, I know there's different kinds of technical rating. So the kind of rating that I'm doing on the kind of government affairs, so I'm in communications and government affairs is kind of where I sit in our company. And the proposal technical rating is different than some of the technical rating that you might do that's more centered on like documentation or that kind of realm. So can you differentiate? Are you thinking about all of it? Are you thinking about one or the other? I know you're typing, so I'm giving you a second here. Open to all of it. Okay, well, I can speak about the side that I'm on, and then maybe somebody else can speak about the other side of things. So I actually think that having a master's degree where you have done research and you've got other kinds of the teaching experience is maybe a little bit less central to a lot of technical writing, although in the job that I'm doing, because I'm working with people out in the field, I actually do a lot of writing coaching to try to help them be self-sufficient in what they're doing. But I think that's probably a little bit less common. So I'll start by saying the size of the company that you're working for may have a lot to do with what you ultimately end up doing. So if I had the role of technical writer at like Lockheed or somewhere that was a lot bigger and I was in the proposal world, I would probably have a more singular job that I was doing. Instead, I got hired on to a company that had never had someone in a role like this before, that had, excuse me, essentially a problem that needed to be solved. And so I got to use my skill set to figure out how to solve the problem. Technical writer is probably not the best title for what I'm actually doing. I write a lot, but I do a lot of other things for them. So if you're with a really small company, and especially somewhere where they're trying to inaugurate a role, you may be doing a lot more and using some of that research background and some of the teaching background to kind of leverage your skills to say, here's what I can do, and here's how I can build this for you. If you're at a larger or more established company or somewhere where there's a kind of a more defined hierarchy in the proposal writing space, you may do exactly what you're hired to do. And it may be like, you are the editor, the document comes to you at this stage, and then you send it out, and that's what you do. And this is kind of, these are your boundaries. And so both of those things exist. I would say in terms of making yourself more competitive, it does depend on the role that you're looking at. What you want to highlight, your editing skills, your writing skills, your project management skills. But I think, as I said before, really kind of emphasizing your skills in terms of, you have skills as a writer, you have skills as a facilitator of coaching and learning, and you have skills as a researcher and a project manager, I would say, coming out of a master's program, because you're doing all of those things. So emphasizing those and then giving examples of those things, I think would really help to make you competitive. And also, as somebody who's been on the other side, the hiring side now at this point, having really well written materials that make a case for your skill set is important as well. And I actually would say, even if somebody doesn't call for a cover letter, writing one helps make a case for yourself as well, in connecting the dots between your background and what the company is looking for.
I would piggyback off that too, and saying, find a mentor. If there's a job that you are looking for, or an industry that you want to get into, find someone who's good at that and start talking to them. As soon as I got my first job, I looked at who was successful in the company and who is someone I want to be or emulate. And I was the first one to walk up to them and say, hey, you don't know me, I don't know you, but you have a really great reputation. You've done these great things. I want to be like you one day. Like, can you mentor me? And that was a really helpful exchange that I've taken to every single job I've been at, because now you have a seasoned advocate who could help you with some of these things more hands-on, especially if you want to grow in a company or be at a company. So you don't have to work there to get that mentor. You can reach out to them in any variety of different ways. Your professors and your faculty have a lot of connections to people in the industry too. So you can always ask, is there someone who is really good at technical writing, in the healthcare system that ask around and get those people to, invest in you. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but just little by little, having that mentorship is going to be really, really important, because they're your biggest advocates, and it's helped me out so much.
You want to add
Oh,
anything?
favorite thing about my job, by the way, sorry, I didn't say that. For fundraising, it's amazing to see people have that click when they make a gift and they see that first level of impact. So for example, they fund their first scholarship and they get to meet that recipient, or they fund a program and they get to see it come to life. And they're so happy because they gave to that. Best part for teaching, best part is when students are no longer afraid of writing something for me. Like when they're actually confident in doing something and they're no longer afraid of the paper and they get excited. I love that. It's the best feeling in the world.
Emily, do you want to say what your favorite part of your job is, or Laura, any of that?
I can say a little bit, because there's been so much conversation about leaving academia or staying academia, and I've had so many thoughts about this, and I always, not necessarily leave, but have my feet in different areas. And so what I do like about academia is that we get to choose what to focus our energy on in some respect when it comes to research. For me, like that has been a huge thing that I love is that I get to decide what I research. And yeah, the state is now telling me that I can't say certain words to reference my research or that I can't talk about things in a specific way, but ultimately I know what I'm researching and I get to make that decision about what it is, which is a huge difference to me than like doing research for industry where it's very much tied to the business case and like how is this going to make us more money? In the humanities, in academia, for me, it's giving me the flexibility to decide where I want to invest my brain power, in collaboration with others' brain power. And I think that's what the world needs right now. Like, I do think we need to connect with people and work on research that really, I don't know, works towards the values that we want. And so, yeah, that's what I love. And I think that's what keeps me kind of doing this work is because I do see the value of being able to decide in some regards how you spend your time and energy.
I think for me, my favorite part of my job is the pace of the strategic problem solving. So I like that there's a problem, we solve the problem, we go on to the next problem. That pacing is something that I really appreciate. And I also, there's flexibility both in academia and outside of academia. It's different kinds of flexibility. So work is work, and that's at the end of the day. But there is flexibility on both sides. And right now, for me, I have a not quite 6-month-old baby, and so there is something about the 9 to 5 and being able to bound my time. And different people have different abilities to create boundaries for themselves. I was very bad at creating boundaries for myself when I was an academic. There was always more work to be done. And so I would just do it all the time, middle of the night, all the time. I mean, I worked 24 hours a day personally, because that was how I was not good at setting those boundaries. And I think in the corporate world, the boundaries are a little bit more there. And I work for a company that does not take advantage of me and my time, which is a big asterisk on this. And so I'm able to bound my time a little bit more in my current job.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm curious if Chris or Emily or Laura, if you have any questions for each other or anything like that. I mean, you've covered a lot of ground, so.
What would you say to Emily and Laura, the class that stood out to you the most because of something that it taught you that helped you today? Like what was that one class that you like that stuck with you?
So many, but also so much of the learning for me happened out, like the classes were great. I'm not saying anything negative, but so much of the learning happened outside of the classroom in talking about teaching. So I would say like the classes that were about teaching composition and writing studies, I didn't know that people had done research about writing studies. Like I just didn't know that, you know? So it was so cool to learn that there was actual data behind the pedagogy that my teachers were employing in the classroom, and getting to learn that and then talk about it with others who were interested was yeah, it was really transformative for me because I just thought like teachers got good by teaching for a long time, which is partly true, but I didn't know that there was data to back up our strategies and things like that. I had no idea.
I agree that in the writing center, the kind of the pedagogy behind writing center strategy really changed, because I taught in my master's, obviously my PhD, and then afterwards, and those were all, like Laura said, I had more teaching experience in my PhD than most of my cohort mates, and was more comfortable in the classroom because we'd had that class. That's a rarity, is having a class on teaching. What about Chris? What was your transformative?
I was honestly hoping that
experience?
you wouldn't ask me that because I couldn't decide. Um, I think the one that stood out to me the most was actually like composition theory and history. Because it's one that I expected to like the least. I went into it with very low expectations. I was like, all right, we're talking about history. And it was just so incredible and dynamic. Like Dr. Kareem really transformed all of my, thought processes about where does this come from? And I'm a big question asker of like, okay, what is the existence of this? Like, what started all of this? what are these problems that we have and where do they come from? And it really laid the foundation to help me seek out solutions for the future, for future students based off what's happened in the past. And you look at like the institution of writing studies as it is and the way that it came to be, it's not like we've had, writing studies as a core discipline for centuries. We've always studied writing in some way, but not in the way that we look at it now. And to learn those building blocks just helped me understand, like, this is why students have so much issue in the classroom. This is why students hate their paper. This is why students hate writing, because of all the stuff that's happened over the past 100+ years, especially here in America. So that was the one that it just transformed me so much, and it helped me relate more to my students.
That's great. So Ken, I saw that you joined us. I'm happy to see you. We do have the whole session recorded, so you can listen to the other information later. I'll send you that link. But do you have any questions? And it's okay if it's a rerun. Do you have any questions off the top of your head right now?
Yeah, I do. I was actually typing it. Also, I do have a 2-year-old on the side, so if you hear giggling and shouting, it's that. But I was curious. I came in a little late, so I'm not sure if this was asked, but I did want to know if anyone, I believe Emily, you mentioned you had a PhD. How did you know it was the right time to pursue that PhD, or is there something? I'm so sorry. Yeah, if you have questions
You have to
about
tell us your friend's name. Who is that with us?
this is Maya.
Hi, Maya.
She's my sister's baby girl and my niece, and she's very excited. Okay.
So how did you know it was time, or when and how to pursue your PhD?
I resisted it for a long time. I actually didn't want to get a master's either because I just wanted to work and make money. Like, that was a big pressure for me. A lot of like family responsibilities and stuff. So I didn't go right to my PhD. I also fell in love with teaching, so I taught full time for 2 years before going to get my PhD. But at the time that I was teaching in DWR, actually, my colleagues, like, we brought in assistant professors who had research responsibilities, and I just hung out with them. I was just like, what are you all talking about? Like, what is your job? What do you do? And they had so many cool ideas that made me feel like, oh, I could have cool ideas. But because I had such a high teaching load, as a lecturer, you don't really have time to explore those ideas. And so I thought, I want to have time to explore those ideas. And that's what pushed me to kind of get the PhD, is having mentors, because, they helped me understand the process and how to apply and like where they went, kind of that sort of stuff. But B, I was just really interested in teaching, and the idea of like doing research and writing about it as part of my job was really appealing to me.
So I took a break for a year. After my undergrad, I had studied religion. I said this at the beginning. And initially, I mean, that was kind of my first love. Was I studied biblical studies, actually, like the sociology of first century Palestine. There's not a great job market in biblical studies. It's especially if you don't want to be at a religious institution. And so I was already kind of having a crisis of what am I going to do? And I was debating law school or grad school. So I worked in an admission office. Hello. So this is my friend who is here
Hey, that's
to join
Sarah,
us for a
huh?
few minutes. Yes, this
You
is
have to
Sarah.
show Maya Sarah, Ken.
This is Sarah. She's almost 6 months old. So I worked in an admission office, and then I went straight though from my master's at UCF to my PhD at Chapel Hill.
Maya, that's Sarah. All right, I'll shut up now. So you were saying, okay, so you were saying you went straight from your master's on, and how did you kind of make the decision that it was the right time to do it?
So after I had decided on the master's, and when I was in the master's program, I enjoyed writing my thesis so much that I knew that I wanted to go get a PhD. That was kind of, sorry, I left that part out. That was the decision-making kind of moment for me. And at the time, my fiance, who's now my husband, was in a PhD program. And so it seemed like while he was in his program, that was the time for me to do my program. And I also made a decision geographically based because he was in Virginia at the time in his program. So I was 3 hours in any direction was where I was looking.
Ken, does that kind of get at some of what you're asking about? All right. All right. Does anybody else have a question you'd like to ask? So we have covered a lot of really good ground in this conversation, and I know that several folks have class at 6. And so I think, oh yeah, yeah, Chris, I mean, we should talk about possibilities. But I think this is a great place to leave this excellent conversation. If anybody else wants to make a comment, Dr. Robertson, if you want to say anything, or anybody else, that would be great. But I think we've covered so much ground and you all have given us such a lot to think about. And so I don't know. Sherry, do you want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you to these alumni who have come here tonight. You know, Emily, we got to meet each other when you were on campus recently, but Laura, as you know, you were our very first ever keynote speaker for our Knights Right Showcase, now in our 15th year. And people are always just like, Laura Gonzalez studied here. So, I mean, you know, and Chris, when you were talking about the return on investment of donors, you are single-handedly responsible for the scholarly works that are happening in this unit as a result of your good works in your position. So we are just thrilled. We are thrilled to be here with you tonight. We always say we stand on the shoulders of giants, and so here they are.
Thank you, Sherry. Anybody else want to have a last word? All right. Well, if anybody wants to connect, I'm happy to make that happen. If people have questions, that kind of thing. I know that these are generous folks who, you know, I'm sure I can make that connection for you, or you can reach right out. Thank you all so much. I mean, you just make me so proud of the program and obviously of you individually. It's just such a great thing. So thank you so much. And thank you, Sarah, for the cameo. And everybody have a great night.